Welcome to another episode of Pizza Technologies, or as we say, Programming with Pizza Technologies. The host Keith, and I am back with another episode on HTML. Now, today we are going to be doing the HTML favicon. The favicon is a small image that is displayed next to the page title on the browser tab. I hope we are understanding. The favicon is a small image that is displayed next to the page title on the browser tab. Now, how do we add a favicon in HTML? You can use any image you like as your favicon. You can create your own favicon on sites like what I'm about to copy in a short while, like this site here. This can be our site. Sorry, this can be our site. And this site you can create a favicon. A favicon image, it is displayed to the left of the page title. It's displayed to the left of the page title in a browser. I will show you in a short while. Now, to add a favicon to your website, either save the to add a favicon to your website, either save your favicon image to the root directory of your web server, or create a folder in the root directory called images and save your icon image in this folder. A common name for the favicon image is favicon.icon or icon. Next, add a link to your element now add a link to a link element like add a link element to your index HTML file after the title element. So it's supposed to look like this. Oh wait, there's a favicon here. So sure there is. Sorry, this is not a website that should be seen by everyone. Let's take this one for example. The Pizza Technologies website. It was doing some service on some time ago. This one here. This here is a favicon for me. I have just been able to change it into my own logo, and it shows very nicely in my website. As you can see, here is that favicon. Whatever you can see here is the favicon. I hope that's understood. Now we're going to be walking into tables. HTML tables. Tables allow web browsers to arrange data into rows and columns. Okay. A table consists of a table of cells inside rows and columns. Each table cell is defined by a TD and an end tag of TD as well. For table, TD stands for table data. Okay. Now everything between TD and the end tag of TD are the content of a table cell. Okay, now table rows. Each table row starts with a TR tag. TR stands for table row. You can have as many rows as you like in a table. Just make sure that the number of cells are the same in each row. There are times where a row can have less or more cells than another. I will teach you that later on. Now, table headers. Sometimes you want your cells to be headers, and in those cases, the TH tag instead of the TD tag is used. Okay, so TH for table headers instead of the TD tag is used, and the TD tag was table data. Now, table borders exist in tables. When you add a border to the table, you also add borders around each table cell. This is done in CSS. Collapsed table borders, to avoid having double borders like the example above. This is an example in CSS. So, seeing that I haven't started teaching you CSS, it's kind of tricky. Oh well. So, CSS, the border has one pixel which is solid black. Therefore, the table borders all come in solid black as well. The style table borders would change the solid black into a background color. You could maybe do blue or red, or you could have a round table. You could have a round table border radius as well. You could skip the border around the table, leaving out the table from the CSS selector. You could have dotted table borders, or dashed or solid or double, groove, ridge, inset, outset, none, or hidden table borders. Table sizes can come in different sizes for each column or row or the entire table. You can use the style attribute with the width and height properties to specify the size of a table, row, or column. To set the width of a table and the style, and to set the width of a table, add the style attribute to the table element. To set the specific column, add the style attribute th table header or td table data to the element. To set the height to the specific row, add the style attribute to the table row element. Table headers. Wow. The HTMLs have tables that can have headers for each column or row, or for many columns or rows. HTML table headers. Table headers are defined with th elements, and each th element represents a table cell. But vertical table headers, to use the first column as table headers, define the first cell in each row as a th element. Align table headers. By default, table headers are bold and centered. Sorry about that. A header for multiple columns you can have a header that spans over two or more columns. A table caption, you can add a caption that serves as a heading for the entire table. The caption tag should be inserted immediately after the table tag. Padding and spacing in the tables. HTML tables can adjust the padding inside the cells and also the space between the cells. Cell padding is the space between the cell edges and the cell content. By default, the padding is set to 0, but to add padding on the table cells, use the CSS padding property. To add the padding only above the content, use the padding top property. And the other sides with the padding bottom, padding left, and padding right properties, respectively. You could choose to jumble them up. Cell spacing is the space between each cell. By default, the space is set to 2 pixels. That is a HTML table and sits with a subheading of cell spacing. To change the space between table cells, use the CSS border spacing property on the table element. In HTML tables, there is something known as a col span and a row span. Now, in HTML tables col span, to make a cell span over multiple times, use the col span attribute. Now, col span is an attribute that can make a cell span over multiple columns. The value of a col span attribute represents the number of columns to span. There's also the row span, which makes the cell span over multiple rows, which is also an attribute. The value of a row span attribute represents the number of rows to span. There is such a thing as table styling, which you can use the CSS to make your tables look better. There is zebra stripes, which you can add background color on every table like zebra stripes to give you a nice zebra effect. You could have vertical zebra stripes or horizontal zebra stripes. It really depends on you as a person and what you prefer. There is the hoverable table, where once you hover your mouse or your pointer on that specific line is where you see the highlight. Finally, there is a HTML table call group. The call group element is used to style specific columns of a table. The HTML table call group, if you want to style 2 columns of a table, use the call group and call elements. The call group should be used let me give you that specific notes. The call group should be used it's the call group, which happens to be an element, should be used as a container for the column specifications. Each group as specified with a call element. The span attribute specifies how many columns that gets the style. The style attribute specifies the style to give the columns. Note to self, there's a very limited selection of legal CSS properties for call groups. Another note to self is that the call group tag The call group tag must be a child of a table element and should be placed before any other table elements like a T-head or a TR or a TD, etc. but after the caption element if present. There are legal CSS properties. They are very limited selection of CSS properties that are allowed to be used in the call group. Width property, visibility property, background property, border properties. All other CSS properties will have no effect on the tables. Multiple call elements. If you want to style more columns with different styles, use more call elements inside the call group. Okay. There is such a thing as empty call groups as well, where if you want to style columns in the middle of a table, insert an empty call element with no styles for the columns before. You can hide columns with the visibility collapse property. And with that, I close the favicon and the tables lesson today. Like and subscribe for more content. We shall meet tomorrow.